and let's go. Welcome to ThursdAI, June 13th. Can you believe it's June 13th? It's almost half through 2024. This is crazy. It's mostly crazy because for folks who've been joining the ThursdAI Spaces on X for a while, we've been going for more than a year. We actually started on March 14th last year when GPT-4 dropped, but the actual podcast and the recordings and everything didn't start until June. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the recordings of the podcast and the newsletter episode. So I think we're at week like 50. So I think in 2 weeks is going to be like the actual 1-year anniversary. And incidentally, and I think there's nothing incidental, in 2 weeks is going to be also the AI Engineer Summit in San Francisco, which I'm going to talk about soon. Hopefully Swix will join us because I'm going to be there presenting, and it's going to be a lot of the things we talk about and significantly helped boost and make ThursdAI into what it is today. And so we're going to cover this as well. But yes, we're halfway into 2024, and I think we've completed the rounds of all of the major companies announcing all of their major stuff. And this week, of course, the biggest thing is Apple announcing all of their crazy WWDC things. With this, I think we'll just get started with the TLDR. Here is the TLDR recap of everything that we've covered on ThursdAI, June 13th, 2024. And it all started with Apple Intelligence, which is an attempt of Apple to rebrand AI. The week started with WWDC, which is Apple's developer conference, and they made us wait. And we've talked about everything that Apple has announced on there, specifically from a technical perspective. So we covered it from multiple angles. Apple Intelligence it's a whole thing basically built from on-device models, both language and image. Those on-device models are fine-tuned for tasks via LoRa adapters that they switch on the fly. They also have specific quantization methods between 2 and 4, like 3.5 something bit quantization, that they claim achieve perfect recall without losing compared to full weight quantization. They have built a semantic index, which is like another fancy Apple term for a vector database that includes everything that the user has: the calendar, the emails, the latest messages, what your mom texted you or emailed you, or photos as well. And also we talked about their new thing called App Intents, which applications would be able to expose ability for this new Apple Intelligence to use applications via calls, for example, like move files around or extract information. And so these on-device models and those image models would be able to take the semantic index into context and the intents to actually do actions. And if those language or image models are not able to, they will hand it off to server models that also run on Apple Silicon in what Apple calls private cloud compute, which also runs on Neural Engine as well. We've talked about the privacy required there because semantic index includes a lot of private stuff. On the benchmarks that Apple shared for these models, the on-device model for the summarization tasks is beating the Mistral 7B. So this is a 3 billion parameter model that beats Mistral 7B from 8 months ago, but runs on device with around 30 tokens a second. So Apple did a lot of stuff like group query attention and speculative decoding to improve for this model. And Apple shared specific benchmarks that they, not standard ones. So on-device models can do summarization as well as Mistral 7B, for example, and composition as well. And then they hand off the bigger tasks to the server models, and they can perform as well as Mixtral and even GPT-4 Turbo for summarization and composition stuff. They have adapters for specific tasks, and those tasks can be like summarization, friendliness, refining, and urgency. And they switch those adapters with sub-second latency. So the users won't feel this, but they fine-tune for specific behaviors. And so this is how their models are able to do very specific things. Many of the very cutting-edge experimental techniques that we've seen on ThursdAI is like the switching of the LoRa, speculative decoding, GQA, they're now building into the on-device and using all of the hardware capabilities and the hardware stack that Apple has to actually deliver this to users is impressive. Those Apple Intelligent things come to only newer devices like iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max and the M1, M2, and 3 Max and iPads. So not Vision Pro and not HomePods, for example. So we dove into this architecture, and then we also talked about a little bit about the deal with OpenAI, who pays whom. Apparently nobody pays nobody. We also talked about intent and app actions, how big this is for the ecosystem, where applications will start building out those intents so that these Apple Intelligence LLMs will be able to tap into those intents to create multi-step actions between applications and actually deliver on users' requests, like moving files from one thing to another, or connect between applications, or order Ubers to locations in the calendar and different things between applications. So very interesting start to a developer ecosystem around LLMs. We then covered what all of these technical things mean in terms of features that Apple is actually building to the users. Apple's tagline for this was AI for the rest of us, and Apple has basically baked all of this into a new Siri that's gotten a brain transplant with LLMs. So previously Siri was a list of basically heuristics, and now Siri has gotten an LLM brain transplant, has a context understanding of everything you're seeing on the screen, plus who you call and who you've texted with, and information and memory about you. The LLM in Siri will understand you better no matter how you will approach a task. One thing that I did notice and we didn't cover is that they have trained one adapter to actually tell you about the capabilities of another adapter. So if you ask Siri, what can Siri do? It will know because they've trained it on every other adapter. So Siri will actually know what it can do. And I think it's very important for discoverability. They also baked in writing tools like rewrite and proofread and summarize right into the OS. So the new macOS and also iOS as well. You'd be able to select some context within the Mail app. You'd be able to rewrite your mails or expand into bullet points or contract. Proofread to check for grammar and word choice and sentence structure. All of these things will now be built for free into the operating system as well. In addition to the LLM that runs on device, they also have image tools, like generative AI tools. They will also have adapters on top of them. One of these adapters is an emoji adapter. So Apple decided to call something Genmoji, where you'd be able to generate a custom emoji based on descriptions. So you'd be able to type something like a dinosaur wearing a cowboy hat, and you'll get an emoji of that. They also will release a feature, I think it's going to be an app, but also a feature inside other apps. It's called an image playground, which is a different way to generate, like DALL-E or Midjourney, but a different way to generate images in different styles like animation or sketch that will get concepts, and those concepts will be contextual to the conversation that you're having. So you'll be texting with somebody, let's say again your mom, it will take your mom's contact picture into account, the conversation you're having about the raccoon and your mom's flying, and then will generate an image based on those three pictures, and you'd be able to also add prompt on this. So like a new and a simpler approach for this image generation that fits like users who never used AI before and don't know about prompt engineering. And also they have something called Image Wand that transforms rough sketches into polished images. Then we moved on to this week's buzz category, the category where I talk about what happens with weights and biases. And we had Swix on stage. Swix is the author of the AI Engineer essay from last year, and also one of the founders of the AI Engineer Summit, which I attended last year. We talked about this AI Engineer upcoming summit in San Francisco in July 25 to 27. I'm going to have a talk there. Weights and Biases is a proud sponsor, but Swix basically said that since last time, the success of this conference is very vast. So every lab has a representative there. So like OpenAI and Google, Anthropic, everybody has a representative there, a talk there. There's a bunch of AI engineers. All of the folks who are building evals are there. So it's going to be like an amazing thing. If you're able to come out and buy a ticket and convince your boss, this is definitely a great place to visit, and come say hi to me and give me a high five as well. We're going to have a booth there. I'm going to have a talk. The CEO of Weights and Biases, Lucas B. Wild, we're also going to have a talk. I'm going to have a talk on the evals track. My talk, Swix leaked some alpha.
This year we have all the model labs, all the big clouds, and just every speaker that I want to hear from, basically just got them all in one room. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm excited about Alex's talk because as far as I know, Alex, you're the first one with a costume. Oh wait, is this an alpha leak? Oh shit.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm supposed to.
But yes, I'm planning on something either epic or crash and burn embarrassing. Stay tuned for that. And then we moved on to open source LLMs. In the open source LLMs, we talked about Microsoft talking about Samba, which is a 3.8 billion parameter Mamba and sliding window attention model that they created, not released yet, beating 5.3 model on major benchmarks, MMLU and GSM 8K and human eval by a large margin. And then we also covered Sakana AI, which released something called LLM Squared, which is a model and also an approach of theirs to give an LLM to come up with preference algorithms to train other LLMs better. We've talked about preference algorithms before, like KTO and PTO and DPO, and now Sakana AI released something that gives an LLM an ability to generate and those algorithms, and they actually discovered that LLM can come up with a state-of-the-art algorithm to do preference for data. We then had a whole deep dive and nerding out about evaluation, where we announced basically breaking news from Abacus AI and Yan Lecun from NYU and Meta, obviously, collaborated to release a new benchmark leaderboard for us called LiveBench.ai, benchmark that they call impossible to game benchmark, which is they partnered together to release a benchmark that cannot be gamed. And then staying with the evals like excitement, we also had a chat with the authors of something called MixEval. MixEval is something we talked about last week. And so if you want to deep dive about MixEval, please listen to this week's episode.
We propose a very elegant methodology to mix the current benchmarks. And we find they correlate quite closely with the Chatbot Arena, which is a current golden standard within the community, but with a 2,000 times faster speed and a 5,000 times cheaper cost than Chatbot Arena. I believe this benchmark is very useful for model developers to get a quick but precise result, and with a very low cost. And a very important thing I want to highlight is that MixEvals has a very stable and quick data updating pipeline. So which means it is not possible to hack.
So very interesting conversation with Jinji. And then we switched to big companies, LLMs and APIs, and announced that Mistral announced a $600 million Series B round, which is insane, and shout out to Mistral, and hopefully this leads to even more open source models for them. And then we also mentioned that OpenAI doubled the revenue in the last 6 months, and it now stands at $3.4 billion annual revenue for OpenAI, which is insane. Really insane. Then the fact that it doubles in 6 months is like unprecedentedly insane. In the vision and video category, we talked about Luma dropping the Dream Machine video generation model in free access. So last week we talked about the Kling model, and this week we have Luma dropping the Dream Machine out of nowhere, and it looks great, almost Sora-like short video generation that supports text to video and image to video and text plus image to video. It looks so great, and people already started using this for creative applications. Incredible to see, and we hope that this brings Sora even faster out of the shadows from OpenAI. And then the last thing that we've covered is that the Stable Diffusion 3 medium weights are finally open weighted from Stable Diffusion. And so you can now download them, you can access them on Fal and Replicate and Hugging Face. And folks are starting to run fine tunes on this and to run distillation for this. Stable Diffusion 3 offers improved photorealism and specifically prompt adherence. Typography is significantly improved, so you can ask for images of like text in the shape of cookies. This is a non-commercially licensed research release with a creator license for commercial use, so you'll have to go to Stability. And we're really hoping that this is not the last opening of a model from Stability AI. And this week, of course, the biggest thing is Apple. We're going to talk about Apple. On Monday this week, Apple's WWDC started with OS updates. And I don't think we're going to cover them here because our space is specifically focused on AI. Many other people covered many other things. I will say that I'm also like very excited about Vision OS. And so I did pin to the bottom of the space. I'll actually pin this to the space if you are interested. Vision OS is super cool to me just because I love all kinds of technology. So I'll just add this. But I think we're focused on Apple Intelligence. For a long time, we've been waiting and speculating of like how Apple will come in there. Obviously, the bigger players, Microsoft has OpenAI, Google has Gemini that they've developed by their own. Amazon doesn't have anything, but they're like investing in Anthropic, so they have that. Apple, we speculated maybe are building their LLM of their own, and it's true and not true because their LLMs are not huge. Let's actually start a little bit of a coverage of what they did announce. Apple announced something called Apple Intelligence, which is their kind of umbrella term of sprinkling AI throughout their ecosystem. And that's going to go into that's going to start getting integrated into iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max and Mac devices and iPads, I believe, with M1, M2, M3, and probably M4 chips that's going to get announced probably in the hardware event this fall. AI only for people who can afford it and only for the top line devices, but that makes sense because probably it requires a lot of hardware. The kicker there is they want AI that's private, that's powerful, that's personal, and that's secure. And for that, I think we expected this, LDJ, for a long time. We talked about on device. I think the main difference between everything we saw before and what Apple is presenting to us is on device execution of their LLMs, at least to some extent. LDJ, I want to talk about how they're achieving the on-device stuff.
We'll go. So
Yes,
it looks
sir.
like it's a 3B, and they're using their Floras.
Wait, I'm cutting out, or am I fine?
You're cutting out, but go ahead, actually.
I think LDJ's signal is delayed, Nistan. I think you and I are in sync and LDJ is later. Nistan, why don't you go ahead and then we'll ask LDJ to rejoin.
Okay, so while LDJ's inference buffers, it looks like it's a 3B model that runs on the device, and they're using some kind of mixture of LoRa's thing. This is still very much heavy speculation because I don't know anyone who's actually opened up Xcode tools and done a profiler on the performance. But yeah, it looks like a 3 billion parameter model that they're running, and they're switching adapters on device. This call might be wrong, but we will know much more accurately in the coming weeks once somebody just runs a memory profiler on it.
Yeah, so 3 billion parameter that runs on device. And I think the next thing that they've announced that if that model is not capable of running some of the tasks, there's going to be a handoff to a server-based language model that's available with their private cloud compute, which we'll also cover a little bit later. And that model will run on their Apple Silicon servers. So not yet like the handoff with ChatGPT. You will be able to do some tasks locally on device and with private things. And then a handoff will happen if it needs a little bit more power. Now, some stuff, technically, they released a Apple engineering, machine learning.apple.com released introducing on-device and server foundational models like breakdown. And in that breakdown, they have a very interesting like technical breakdown of how they're actually doing this. And this is like what ThursdAI is all about. So let's try to at least cover a little bit of this. Nistan, you said this as well. They're doing some very interesting things like training adapters for specific I would say purposes even. So Apple, and we've been speculating this, Apple doesn't like ugly. Apple doesn't like unknown things that the users will do with their AI. It's like kind of the stuff that we saw with Google, right? Where some people are asking it to search and it says, hey, you have to add glue to your pizza for the cheese to stick on it, or you have to eat 1 rock a day or something. And all of those examples, or like the examples where you would generate Nazis who are black, etc. There was a speculation of like how would Apple sidestep the hallucination stuff or the very wide nature of how LLMs are approaching things. And it looks like we got the answer. Apple trained adapters. Apple trained fine-tuned adapters for very specific tasks, very narrow tasks like summarization. Let me actually find the list of tasks. I have a list of tasks here. Summarization, friendliness, refining, urgency, query handling, mail replies, and a bunch of other stuff. And they do these adapters for both the LLM version and the diffusion model. So they have both the LLM and diffusion models, because we're going to also say that they have a image generation diffusion models on device as well. And they're stacking these adapters on top of these models and switching them in real time, in almost real time, achieving very quick performance on device. And those adapters letting them like achieve human satisfaction score that beats 5.3 mini significantly. It's very interesting. They did show, I don't know, Nistan, if you had the chance to see this, or LDJ, if you rejoined us, you definitely had the chance to see this. They showed comparison scores from their on-device plus adapter stuff to 5.3, for example, but those are not the usual metrics that we've seen. Those are specific human satisfaction kind of unannounced, so not like human eval. They're just like very basic percentage points that they came up with, and so we have to trust that their blog post is correct. On the writing benchmarks, for example, their on-device for summarization tasks, their on-device benchmark is getting a 9.1 score, again, on a very obscure task that they came up with, against Mistral 7B's 8.9 score. So their on-device 3.8 billion parameter model beats Mistral 7B and Gemma 7B and Phi 3 Mini. But again, we don't know the complete things they're doing, but the specific adapters, they're able to switch them super quick to get a very specific, I want to see if I have the quote for speed, but they're achieving like a very impressive, very quick speed for switching real time.
They should be able, because the adapters, when they're compressed, they can only be like 30 megabytes. And iPhones have extremely fast internal storage. Switching between them should be, I don't know, I would say under 100 milliseconds, less, even less, quite a lot less. So they should be able to do that. We all know that you can make great adapters for function calling. You can make great adapters for storytelling, like Matt Schumer and the other guys do.
Yep.
And we know the switching techniques work. We worked on that at Skunkworks. Actually, LDJ helped a lot more than I did on that. Also, recently, Eric Hartford and the guys, they made like a LoRa switching thing as well. Yeah, Miguel Teixeira has also made one. This stuff works. So it's interesting to just see it applied at such a scale, however.
Yeah, they also have a new optimization and quantization technique, if I'm not mistaken, which they claim that they get a quantization that does not reduce coherence. Have you seen this, LDJ? Do you have any comment on this? Have you read this part? Because I'm not quite sure that I understand this fully correctly. Because we know the quantization, the standard like GGF stuff. Nistan, do you have a comment on this? Do you able to read into this? A mixed 2-bit and 4-bit configuration strategy averaging 3.5 bits per weight to achieve the same accuracy as the uncompressed models. That's their claim with these LoRa adapters.
So there is different quantization techniques where a lot of times when something actually does say something like Q4 or Q4KM or Q4KL, there's a lot of different times where a lot of times they're actually telling you like the average quantization that is on that model. And then sometimes it's maybe a little bit less than 4-bit for certain weights, a little bit more than 4-bit for certain other weights, and different configurations like that.
Yeah, that's, I would say, I presented at Cohere the entire 34B model shrunk down to 14 gigs to run on a free Google Colab, and it was that exact technique. It's in the open, it's well known. You put certain weights at 2-bit that don't really matter, and you put other weights at 3 or 4 or 5-bit, and you run statistics on all of them, and you get very small. So I don't see how that is an Apple-centric thing, but that's more of another discussion. But yes, that would work. It's been known to work. I just don't really see what is so new. But again, we're very caught up in this whole bubble of what's going on.
Yeah, no, and sometimes
hello.
Oh yeah, we can hear you. But let me just continue, and I'll tag you in, and feel free to raise your hand if you have comments on the machine learning stuff. And we could hear you well. So additional thing that they have that is very interesting to talk about is they mentioned the semantic index. Of course, Apple would rebrand a vector database into a semantic index, but it's very interesting because they did show off how a semantic index will take something like your photos, your calendar, other things like your contacts and different like maps, location, etc. And they will build this into the context of the request for this LLM to be able to perform tasks for you, because that's where the private part comes from. That's where the personal part comes from. The private part obviously needs to protect the semantic index because the semantic index knows everything about you, and so you don't want to expose and maybe send this to somewhere else. But they call the semantic index. We know it's like a vector database. One feature that they showed off even before mentioning the semantic index is that you'd be able to query your photos, and I think Google showed this as well, with natural language. You'd be able to say, hey, when is the time that I danced with a purple shirt on top of an elephant, whatever, and it will find it. So they're likely embedding images as well. But for the purposes of this LLM in Apple Intelligence, they have a semantic index that goes into this whole thing that's part of this LLM system. So it's not only the model that runs in 3 billion parameter model with switched adapters on top. It's also Oh, we have a new guest here. We're going to welcome Swix in a second. It's not only the model that runs on with the LLM, the adapters on top. What gets fed into this model is also the semantic index of what you're seeing and what is the latest context. So, for example, the examples they gave that you'd be able to say, hey, when mom's landing, and it will be able to read from it will be able to put in the semantic index who's your mom from context, because hopefully you tagged your mom as mom, but also from your email, the kind of the flight that she sent you, etc., and just tell you in real time, hey, she's landing here. So that's one piece. The semantic index is one piece. Any comments on semantic index? Do we know anything else? We don't know if it's like if they're doing the embedding on device. We don't know anything like this, right?
No, but I'm mad that Apple might have just copied all this from the Starlink I got with Mix 2-bit and 3-bit and posted months ago, and was running on an iPhone 12. Okay. Yeah. Did Apple just copy my damn technique? It was open source, but okay. I need to look into this. Go ahead, LDJ.
All right. LDJ, go ahead, and then we'll say hi to Swix, and then we'll continue discussing the personal intelligence system, what they call a personal intelligence system. And by the way, thanks to Ray, you can guys see the pinned tweet that Ray put with the diagram of everything like we're calling Apple Intelligence, which is like super cool as a technical thing. Go ahead, LDJ.
Yeah, sorry, my connection was cutting out earlier. Can you guys hear me fine now?
Yes, you're coming through fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, in regards to the difference in quantization, there is, I'm not sure if they still do this, but I know originally when people were doing type 1, type 2 quantizations and QKM, QKL, different things like that, usually that K4 would just mean the average quantization is 4-bit, but certain parts of the model purposely is like actually more than that, or certain parts of the model quantize less than that. So it might be a similar situation with that, but I also noticed you asked if they're using some type of embeddings, and they did say they are using an on-device semantic index that they like create over time with your context. Yep. And that kind of sounds like an embedding type system to me, or at least like something adjacent to that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just don't know like what type of embedding and whether or not that's on device. Likely that's also on device, right? Like we know that embedding systems are way smaller than LLM systems. We've had the folks that build embedding systems. Usually they were smaller and run on device. Right. With that, I want to just say hi to my friend Swix, who's joining us from somewhere in the world. Swix, you're in Singapore now, right?
Secret lair.
Oh, secret lair. Yeah, sorry to expose you. Okay, Hong Kong.
I've been doxxed.
Yes. Welcome, man. I mentioned AI engineer before, so it depends on how long you have with us. We'll mention this again. You now run the AI Daily News. So once you told me, hey, Alex, how it's probably a lot of commitment to do a weekly show, and now you're doing like a weekly newsletter, and now you're doing a daily newsletter. And you did mention some of the stuff that Apple released, specifically the quantization stuff and something called Talaria. Would you want to talk about this? Because I think I missed that one. I'm not sure what that is.
They mentioned it in their ML engineering blog post as basically the only tool that they're publicly talking about for visualizing their model training. And I think it's fair to ask, what's the point or what's the value in just a visualizer? Actually, there's a lot of value. Like our friend Alex works at a visualizer company called Weights and Biases that helps people make their decisions in Wait, do you play that every time someone mentions 1B?
I will start from now on, yes.
No, it's cool now, man. You need something a little bit more chill.
Okay,
I think 1B is not that hypey. Sorry, 1B is hypey. It's just not that like annoying.
Not DJ Khaled. Okay.
Another one. Talaria is Apple's best advertisement for why you should work at Apple AI. I read this thing. I was like, man, I want to work at Apple AI. This tooling is unheard of, unreal. Basically, it lets you throw shit at the wall, right? If you have infinity money, like Apple has, you can train just like 200 models, and you can go, all right, okay, my compute budget is, my sort of inference budget is like 30 tokens per second. What model, what accuracy can I get based on that, right? And you just sort your models and pick them out. But that's like the highest level view of models. They actually go even deeper to layer by layer inside of the models to profile them to see what's slow. And when you see the visualizations in that paper, you're like, oh, okay, this is why Apple Intelligence is so fast. Like as far as I understand, I don't know if how many people have run language models on phones before. You like the state of the art is like between 5 to 10 tokens per second, and Apple is promising 30.
No, we've had 20 like last year with Red Pajama 3D, like, and LBJ also.
Sorry, instead of state of the art, let me say the common experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. State of the art obviously is faster, but for a widespread, this is the default experience for a billion people. This is pretty good. And anyway, Tolaria, I recommend people check it out. It's the paper that we covered in the Latent Space Discord this week, because it seems like that's the sort of secret weapon.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, at least they mentioned on the Tolaria, at least the summary that I'm reading right now, is that they deployed it 2 years ago, and the evaluation is like many people love this, 800 plus practitioners submitting 3,600 models, 36 plus 100 models. They are building models within Apple, and there's like many people building them. And we know this from the project Titan, I think, that was scrapped, that many like probably built for the car models and then they scrapped, etc. I will say that like one of the things they mentioned on this thing is that they need to understand when they're moving the computation from the personal device to the cloud, or from the cloud to the personal device as well. So I think some of this analysis is to be able to benchmark these models and then to efficiently figure out at what point the intelligence is not strong enough on device to be able to run this on the cloud. LDJ, go ahead. And I do want to talk about the private cloud next, because I think it's a very big piece and very important.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned this, but I'm pretty sure they did actually specifically mention they're using speculative decoding as well.
Yeah.
And that's just, for people unfamiliar, that's just a method where for a lot of the tokens that are easier, you can use like even a much smaller model to inference those. And then just for the harder tokens, you use the full parameters.
I saw somebody list off all of the buzzwords that we've mentioned multiple times on ThursdAI: speculative decoding, group query attention, sliding window, I'm not sure. But yeah, somebody like ticked off, it looks like they built in state of the art, like all of the things we do talk about. It looks like they're now production on like one of the world's like most used hardware devices, which is like super cool to see. They're running this 3 billion parameter model. Let's go back to the drawing, right? Apple Intelligence is like both the language models that we were talking about, the 3.8 billion parameter model, with adapters, specific adapters on top that they train for specific purposes. They're switching them super fast. They're building them on top of the Tolaria tool to understand and optimize them. They have the semantic index that understands everything that, or I don't know, a lot of what you want as a person for your AI to know about, who's your mom and when she lands, and what are your pictures about. The next thing that they've built in is this app intents toolbox thing, where applications can expose intents or what are they capable of doing. And let's say somebody that uses this intelligence, like Siri or whatever other app that plugs into this intelligence, is able to actually perform actions, right? And so not quite agentic, but we've talked about tool use before. We started with function calling, and then we talked about tool use, and we talked about how LLMs are way better when you actually give like an LLM a calculator. It's better at calculating than just like spitting out tokens. And so Apple is now building a whole foundational thing into apps that are able to expose intents. Hey, call me an Uber, for example. Here, I will have to plug in a little thing where Rabbit OS and everything. You remember like when we talked about Rabbit multiple times when, hey, call me an Uber? The way they did this is they basically logged into Uber via VNC on your account, whatever. It's not super secure, not super safe by far. Here is the power of the platform. Apple will be able to tell developers, hey, expose those intents in your apps so that our AI is learning how to use them as tool use. We probably have an adapter for how to call these like intents, and then would be able to perform these cross application use cases and perform multiple tasks for cross applications. And I think that's like extremely powerful. I think this shows specifically not only, hey, we're able to spit out tokens, not only, hey, we're able to spit out tokens fine-tuned for each like task, like summarization, and not only do we know for context we're like adding who your mom is, now we're able to do tasks for you that are very important for you, using your apps to do actual things. Actually, Ray, I wanted to hear from you about this like intense thing. What's your thought on this? What's the power behind this?
There's quite a bit. There's like interactions with Siri, so those that use like personal context awareness, just like you were saying. Also combined with the semantic index, it's part of the core Spotlight thing that basically indexes on your machine. So that's part of the new APIs that would basically work together. so that you get spotlight suggestions when you search. Is still part of that, but you can basically extend that for your apps, and those can feed into your applications. So that's super helpful. They're basically abstracting the stuff from the developer side and keeping the personal intelligence system still under apps on the Apple side. So they don't tell you what exact details are being and sending you all the data to the app side. They're just telling you, hey, the user wants to do something. And actions also include automations like in Shortcuts apps as well. There's also like hardware interactions, like the action button or squeeze gestures like an Apple Pencil. And there's also focus to allow people to reduce distractions. So if you set like a focus mode because you're in a certain area or you're doing a certain thing, that's also going to be allowed to, you can do additional things to build on top of that. Combine that with the interactive widgets that are already offered in Widget Kit, which is like live activities for sports scores or controls or interactive widgets. You basically now add this little language model underneath that you can start doing some orchestration events underneath and have them work together for app developers to build on top of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Intents, thanks for the great summary as well. I think Intents like is super powerful. Swix, thoughts on the Intents like ecosystem power that Apple is like showing us?
Does everyone know that it came out of Shortcuts? We're trying to book the guy who sold Shortcuts to Apple because he's left Apple. So he can actually talk instead of the rest of Apple who cannot talk. So we're trying to book him as a guest. It's unsurprising, and I think it's great. What I thought was poetic that I haven't seen anyone point out, I was saving this for an essay, but fuck it, let's just talk about it here.
Give us alpha. Come on.
Yeah, it's just that every LLM interface needs some kind of a contract. And so for OpenAI, it is the Open API spec, right? Mm-hmm. And people seem to have understood about that. For the no-code people, it's Zapier. That is the contract between the LLM and the rest of the external tools, right? If you call out to Zapier, then Zapier has all these things configured. Spec, there's Zapier, and then now there's App Intents, right? Do they all do the same thing? I don't know because I'm not that familiar with App Intents. But I feel like the App Intents integration is tighter, and therefore you'll be able to do more. And it's nice for the end user because that's what we really want. I do think that having tried to, I don't know if people have tried to build workflows within Apple. The App Intents coverage of the main apps is actually lacking in the sense of if you try to do something. So for me, I have my action buttons triggered to record to Whisper and then call OpenAI for any of my conversations, to brainstorm, to do note-taking, to do whatever. And there's just certain things, I don't remember what exactly, about saving files and playing back audio and like saving to folders. Like it's just like not fully thought through if you want a complete programming interface for iPhone. So they're really going to have to invest in like all this in order to make it completely automatable. But yeah, I mean, like this is the walled garden that you play within in Apple, and it's just interesting that like each LLM sort of major company develops their own modality of interacting with the outside world. That's a quick 2 cents on that.
Thank you. And definitely like the power also come through where if applications, and actually the interesting conversation, which likely not for ThursdAI because we're here about the updates and the technical stuff, is about what's the role of an application with the UI now that an application exposes intents and an LLM that's like powering the device can actually do actions within your application, within your service. Why would people need your UI, for example? Next, I want to talk about, before we get to the actual features that folks will be able to experience, I want to talk about the security stuff and the private cloud compute. I see we have Justin here. Justin, I think that this is like up your alley, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
A little bit, not my grade A forte, but I do know a bit about it as far as enterprise loading and different things that they're trying to do.
I see. If you have anything,
have someone else.
Yeah, okay. If you have anything, just raise your hand. If you want to chime in, I think I mistook you with some other friend of mine that's into kind of specifically into security. You have the LLM that's running on device, the 3.8 billion parameter, whatever that beats 5.3 and beats Mistral. That LLM at some point is not able to do the task that you want, like summarization, and so it will hand off your request to the private cloud. And private cloud compute is Apple's attempt to extend the privacy of how something runs locally on your device onto the cloud as well. And so here's the kind of the simple explanation of this. When you do everything on your device, nothing leaves your device. Potentially, that's like super secure. When you put your stuff like iCloud on device on the server, that's end-to-end encrypted at rest, so potentially secure. when you send stuff on to inference server somewhere, then you have to send like clear text, and that can potentially less secure. So Apple came up with this whole system that's called private cloud compute that extends the same level of privacy to their servers. And we're not going to go deep into like how they're actually achieving this with images that they expose to security individuals and specific like signatures that the device signs and everything. But suffice it to say that there will be a two-piece component, and that's going to be part of the Apple ecosystem, and that's not the deal with OpenAI. I think that was very confusing. And I think some people tried to make this confusing on purpose here on X, but that was very confusing. There is going to be like a server component. It's called private cloud, and that's not the OpenAI stuff. That's like within your Apple ecosystem, your device is going to sign against it. That is a server model that's going to be more powerful, and it looks like, at least on some benchmarks, those server models compete with stuff like GPT-4 Turbo for stuff like summarization. So Apple server, at least based on their writing benchmarks, beats GPT-4 Turbo and Mixtral 822B and Databricks Instruct. Those are the models that they've added on their benchmarks. And also for composition, they're not beating GPT-4 Turbo, but getting like close. So if you want like some more powerful stuff, they will send it to the server, and you'll get some like more powerful LLM stuff. Anything else on private cloud stuff that you guys want to chime in here? I'm looking for Nistin, LDJ, Wolfram, maybe, if you want to chime in on the handoff experience. Wolfram, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because that is a very new thing, that someone who is doing cloud compute is doing it that securely, because privacy is a unique selling point of Apple. So I hope it has the effect on the others, and that they will be encouraged, if not forced, to offer more of that. Because when we have some assistants for ourselves, they need to know everything about us. And we don't necessarily want all of our data to go there. So it's more private than just some files on your system, because you have to give them everything, your financial data, your health data, everything, so they can fully assist you and be useful. So security will be ever more important.
I think that's a very great point. The semantic index that we just covered and talked about includes information like probably your fitness stuff, your emails about maybe your financial info, etc. You want that, like for summarization, for example, you want your emails. That privacy selling point that Apple has, they want to extend it forward. And last thing, before DJ, I'll get to you. Last thing is that they do have a partnership with OpenAI. It was announced that nobody pays anyone in that partnership. They're going to talk about some deal about revenue sharing, but nobody pays anyone, like how Google pays billions of dollars to be the primary search engine. None of this is happening here. But if at some point this Apple Intelligence realizes that it's not good enough to deliver on something, I'm not clear yet how this decision is made, then your user will get a pop-up that says, hey, would you like ChatGPT to actually answer this question for you? And when user clicks yes, they will probably go to the ChatGPT app with that context in mind, and will contact the ChatGPT and APIs. LDJ, go ahead. LDJ, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. What I was going to mention is with the private cloud compute, I wonder if a Mac Studio, especially if you have enough memory on it, or maybe the next Mac Pro that they announce, or maybe a Apple, it's called an Apple Home, right? The HomePod. That's what I'm thinking. Yes, maybe one of those devices, they might release something, I think hopefully where these larger models that they're currently running in servers, you could have even more private by running on the compute that you own. Have your Mac Studio that you're not using just idly sit and running this, or the HomePod that maybe has an M4 chip or something. And I think that would also obviously incentivize people to buy these larger, more expensive Apple products. So I could see them maybe doing that over the next couple of years or something.
Yeah, specifically, a good point, LJ. Specifically, what we should mention is that everything here runs on Apple Silicon. Up until the point we hand this off to ChatGPT, on-device stuff runs on CPU, GPU, neural engine that runs on the A17 and M1, M2, and 3 chips, and the secure enclave thing that Apple has in like the secure element of their stuff, and also the server stuff. They're extending that infrastructure into there as well. So they have secure boot and secure enclave and something called attestation on the servers as well.
Yeah, so I just also wanted to add a little bit about the pre-training and the private data. They say specifically that private personal data or user interactions when training for their foundational models are not used. So they don't actually use that stuff, and they apply filters to remove like the personally identifiable information. So like credit cards and social security stuff. They also filter profanity and other like low quality content according to them. So they basically just do this data extraction, deduplication type of thing. To add a little bit about clarity for the data classes, on the devices, there's actually different data classes, which means like phone call database data, your text message data, health data, and they're actually ranked from different classes going from A, B, C, all the way down. And so when you lock your device, your health data is not accessible on the device unless you like unlock it. That means like unlocking, swiping up to Face ID. If once you enter your passcode, you basically have like Class C data lock. And that just means that your stuff is still available in the background so the apps can do different things on that data. And there's like a whole spider web of stuff. And that's in a lot of technical detail that probably far beyond here, but just missed it. If you can do some research, and I'm happy to link up with you offline to provide some more context and add some more color there.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I did not say that it's unsafe or anything. It's just, to me, it just looks like marketing speak for what any backend development team should be doing in the first place for any enterprise product, not just Apple. So I'll leave it at that. I'll do a long write-up. They didn't implement any bad encryption or anything. Like, it's all proper, and it's on device with Touch ID and Face ID, the key exchange. But yeah, and anyway, that's that talk and go.
The thing that I have to respond there is, without knowing who this person is, so like completely off vibes, I read a very long, like prolonged thread of a security researcher that went deep into how they're doing this with attestation, like a bunch of other stuff that I don't know about security. And he summarized this basically, if you give a very crack team of like security people endless amounts of money and tell them implement the bestest practices, this is pretty much what they will come up with. So while not new, this is like what we should expect, and this is like what Apple basically sells. I want to talk about features before we move on into the next thing, because we've been at this for almost an hour, and we can still go for longer. But I want to actually talk about what will be actually used by all these power tools, right? So far we talked about the technical stuff, like the LLM and the adapters and the app intelligence and the semantic index, and all of this goes into either on device, on server, etc., and they will draw from apps. What will be using this is the new Siri, right? So we've all been saying that Siri is dumb. And so effectively, and Swix, you mentioned that the guy who sold shortcuts to Apple left. Also, the guy who sold Siri to Apple is also not there. And we actually had a chat with him. Robert Scoble is his friend, so we actually had a chat with him. The guy said, this is exactly what we wanted to do with Siri all this time. We just didn't have the power. And so Apple is basically building Siri, basically a brain transplant. Siri is now built into the device. It's able to see what you're looking at. And for folks who have been for ThursdAI for a minute, we talked about something they released called Ferret UI, and likely they're tapping into this. Ferret is their paper that they released, Understanding UI. Siri is now feeling more native and more built into the device. So it's understanding what you're looking at. It has the context of your private stuff via the semantic index. It's able to do actions via this app intents things. And it's obviously way smarter and also on device, right? So Siri previously was on server, so you had to wait. So now it's like faster because some of it is on device. It's able to do stuff like, besides the context of your seeing, it's able to do contextual understanding and act on it. So do actions for you between apps. It's able to answer better ability to understand what you mean, because like one of the main points against Siri that people like lambasted against is it doesn't get me. Like, it's stupid. It doesn't know when I want to search for something, or if I want her to ask me something, it goes and searches the web and says, here's the responses from the web. Basically, the jump to the generative AI LLM era that we're all in with ChatGPT, that's hopefully what's going to come out of Siri. Nobody was able to test it out yet. So the beta iOS is not yet have the Siri. And also there's an integration with ChatGPT for advanced queries and content generation where the user has content. Anything else that I missed about Siri that's new that you guys want to cover that's going to be very interesting? LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, there is, I guess you somewhat covered this, but just the ability for it to actually do things for you, especially for older people that are not as tech savvy. Hey, move this. Can you put this image in my notes that I made about Alex and his next podcast episode? And then it just goes to the other app and literally pastes the image in the correct note that I'm talking about. Even for me, I could see it being useful sometimes. And I think we're finally getting to that stage of LLMs and AI actually being used for much more useful stuff than just like a chatbot for knowledge.
They also have the additional thing that's not necessarily Siri is the summarization stuff that they have. And one of the things that I love specifically is the notification summary, where if your group chat is going off, they will actually read all of the messages and give you a summary of what's going on in the group chat, which I found like super, super cool. I really hope it extends to WhatsApp, because I actually don't know if they do it for all notifications, but that's like a very good use of on-device embedded LLM that I've been waiting for personally. Because it's fine to have ChatGPT, very smart, and you go there and you can summarize copy-pastable stuff. But the stuff that you actually want when you have like millions of notifications, when you can go into focus mode and you get only a summary of a group chat. Or I think Swix, did you see the prioritization stuff as well? You're probably somebody who gets tons of notifications as well. What do you think about like those tools, and what else is missing there that you would like them to do in the next version?
Sorry, I didn't prep for this one.
It's
nice to have. It's nice to have. Actually, there was like a viral tweet the day before WWDC for someone trying to say they're showing their screen and how the notifications are pretty broken.
Oh, just scrolling through like an endless list, right? Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. I do have that issue. It's all about the execution. We don't have it yet, right? I think you can maybe try a preview of iOS 18 right now, but I don't think it has all this.
No, there's no Apple Intelligence.
We're just going based on marketing material, and it's going to be up to the actual final execution to see what that looks like. But it's good. It's positive direction. I think that the way that they showed prioritization inside of their Mail app, was it the Mail app?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like the Apple native Mail app, where there's like basically 4 inboxes. It's the exact same schema that Superhuman uses, and probably will want to have multiple inboxes for notifications eventually. And so that'll be the next evolution.
Yep. So they also have summaries in messages as well. They have something called cleanup photos, which I don't actually know. And they have built in on the system level, on the OS level, they have writing tools. Writing tools where you select a bunch of text, and many people now do this with ChatGPT. Many people select the text and there's, I need to summarize this, or I need to make this into bullet points. I need to expand, I need to contract, I need to extract key points, like all these things. Now it's built into the OS, right? So you select something, you have a notification, like an OS level menu pops up that says proofread or rewrite or friendly, professional tone of voice, concise tone of voice. And you obviously can describe your change yourself, so you can start typing what you actually want, which is great. So LLM is built in everything, very cool. And I do want to cover the diffusion stuff a little bit, the image stuff a little bit. Anybody else here get excited about diffusion stuff? Do you want to talk about this instead of me? And if not, I can cover this. Wolfram, you want to talk about the diffusion stuff?
I'm excited about it, but
okay, I can cover.
I leave you to talk about it.
Okay, LDJ, go ahead and I'll cover the rest of it.
Yeah, just briefly, they did explicitly say that they're at least doing some image generation on device, so that makes me excited just from the standpoint of they also said they have the LoRa adapters, many groups of smaller parameters that they're connecting to the main image generation models and doing that for the different styles.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the fact that you're able to do it decently fast on device, I'm just excited about that.
So absolutely. Built in, the same as the LLM, they have a diffusion model. We don't know which one, but we do know that Apple released previously open source stuff that runs like Stable Diffusion super fast. We know that they have the MLX platform that runs like directly on their devices, all kinds of like inferences. And so now they added a bunch of features for generative diffusion models. So generative like AI art, namely Image Playground and Image Wand and Genmoji. Those are like the 3 main ones. Let's start with Genmoji because I think that's like the coolest one. And I saw many people just like scoff at it and don't understand like why it's so cool. No matter which Discord you are, no matter which Slack, if you're in any company Slack, if you go to the custom emoji area, there's going to be a bunch of custom emojis that are part of that culture. And so far in Apple, in messages, there's like group in messages, etc. You only had the tap back thing. You only had 5 reactions, plus thumbs up, thumbs down, haha, and whatever. So not only did Apple expand that to give you the full range of emojis, they now also added any possible emoji that you can think of, like chef's kiss, for example, or a spa emoji with like cucumbers on its eyes, or a balloon animal, like all of these things. And you can literally describe this into what you want. They have a on-device model, generative AI model. We don't know if it's like Stable Diffusion based or whatever Apple trained. We don't know. They did mention that they trained it respectfully because it's Apple. They don't want to get sued. That generates this emoji in near instant real time with this fine-tuned, probably fine-tuned LoRa adapter. And then you can actually send it in the UI. So they will save it. You can actually respond with it, reply with it in the UI, which is, I find it super cool. I think that this is going to be like a very powerful feature for many, at least me and other, me and the Gen Z people who will use this, and also grandmas as well. Then also they have what's called an image playground. Image playground is like this attempt to build a way to generate images like DALL-E or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, whatever. But they have a different approach in the UI because it's Apple. They want to do everything the Apple way. Image Playground gives you the ability to add concepts rather than just words. So instead of a prompt that you write, hey, generate a HD version of this area and this person from this angle using these, whatever, they just have concepts that you add. And Apple suggests, like the UI suggests the concepts for you. And those concepts are contextual as well. So if you're chatting with someone, everybody's like making fun of this like grandma image that they generated. But I think like everybody likes to poke fun and for engagement farming. But I think it's actually like super, super cool. Because if you're having a conversation with your mom about a flight and she's tired and she says, and listen, this is a reference to you, and she's, I'm tired as a raccoon, you'd be able to take the concepts flying, raccoon, and mom. And the mom concept will actually take her image from the profile picture, whatever, because it's all part of the semantic index. And they will basically run the LoRa adapters, IP adapters, whatever, and generate this image with those concepts together. And that image will look like the conversation you're having. I think that's super, super powerful. While all of this runs on device as well, I think it's super powerful. And they only have 3 styles there, like the natural. They don't have natural. They have drawn and a cartoon and everything. So they will avoid all kinds of like different NSFW, different things. And that image playground is on its own probably app, but also is a feature that is built into like notes, and then application developers will be able to build into other things as well. I think that's like just super powerful that it's contextual image generation that AI developers can now build into every app. And I think that's super powerful. That runs on device. I haven't actually seen this from Google, for example. I don't think they do the Imagen stuff or whatever they call it. I haven't seen them do this on device on Android. Unless I'm mistaken, folks here do remember something like this. I think that's fairly novel for Apple. Anything else on the image stuff? I think that's pretty much it on the generation stuff. The contextual stuff, the image playground, the Genmojis, and something called Image Wand, which I don't honestly remember what it is. I think that's pretty much it. I think we've covered most of Apple. Oh, no. One last thing. Swix, the thing that you said that you're doing with the action button, they're bringing transcription, translation, and audio recording summaries into the OS level as well. So now transcription is way better. I already noticed it. It's way better even without kind of the AI stuff, the Apple Intelligence stuff. Like Vision OS 2 has like amazing transcription now on device. So they significantly improved. I don't know if it's whisper level, but significantly improved transcription. But now you'd be able to record audio and get summaries in notes as well. You'd be able to just speak and get summaries like in transcripted way natively as well. And I think we covered Apple Intelligence, folks. Any other comments from folks on stage? Jun Yang, I haven't heard from you. I don't know if you're an Apple user, but I would love to hear from you as well on this topic. What's your general thoughts, and if anything that I missed?
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah,
no comments.
I haven't. Yeah,
you've been busy.
Follow the Apple Intelligence much. Yeah.
All right, so I hope I did a good summary for you, and now you know everything. Swix, anything else that I missed that you wanted them to do and they didn't deliver, or anything that surprised you out of this release? And I think we'll move on to talk about other stuff.
Did you guys cover the fact that Apple is not paying OpenAI?
Let's do that. Let's talk about this. I had multiple people talk on my feed who's paying whom. And I think the information broke this news, right? So like that nobody's actually paying anybody in this deal. And I found it very interesting.
It's just a free API call. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think what's going on here is that Apple is really trying to keep OpenAI at arm's length. I'm surprised that Sam would go for this deal because it's a shitty deal for OpenAI, to be super honest. And it's going to be Apple models first and foremost, and they will try as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to add like Google and just make OpenAI one of many model providers. And Apple will try to dominate its sort of AI wall garden for its own users. And I think that's good for users, but also challenging for OpenAI. This is why they need to build a phone.
Interesting take. I thought the other way. And let me present like what I thought of this. I thought of Sam as a very great deal maker because I thought that OpenAI would have to pay Apple to be on there, like Google pays Apple to be like the first in the drop down of search engines. And Google pays billions of dollars for that privilege and gets a lot of business out of it.
I don't know.
All right, ThursdAI is not for debates.
That's a broader question.
Yeah.
It's just how many of you, if Safari came with no default search, you would set it to Google, right? I don't know that Google actually needs to pay $20 billion. I know that it sounds ridiculous me saying that because someone thinks it's worth $20 billion a year to pay Apple to be default search. But clearly OpenAI is the premier brand and people are going to try to call OpenAI anyway. Maybe it's not worth it, or Sam just said no and that's the best deal they could get. All I'm just saying is that regardless, Apple is putting itself first and foremost, and every call to OpenAI or any other external model is behind are you sure you want to do this wall, which is going to decrease usage significantly, right? Like you're going to significantly prefer Apple models over anyone else, even if it's worse.
So I think contextually something I want to cover later, but is very relevant to this, is that revenue at OpenAI was just like announced that it's doubled for the past 6 months. And now OpenAI's revenue is like at $3.4 billion annual dollars. 3.4 billion. It doubled for the past 6 months. Most of this revenue comes likely from people using ChatGPT, paying the $20 for it. And I think despite what we think about Apple putting this behind the thing, many people will discover ChatGPT just by clicking that button potentially. But I do want to hear from, I think, LDJ, you were next, and then Nistan about these topics, and then I think we'll start moving on.
Yeah, so a couple of things. On the revenue, I think it was reported by The Information or some reputable source similar to The Information that most of their revenue actually over the past few months and like over this year has been from like enterprise related things and API and actually not from like $20 subscriptions, and which I guess that's how it is with a lot of businesses. So I think right now they're already allowing GPT-4o for free, right? And so them allowing Apple users to also use it for free is not too different. And yeah, technically iPhone and Apple products have a wider user base than what OpenAI is currently able to handle. However, the new series is not being made available to all Apple users. It's only to people with iPhone 15 Pro or higher and anybody with an M1 Mac or higher. So it's like still a fairly limited amount that they're just expanding that free GPT-4o access to.
Yeah, makes sense. And Nistan, last thing, and then we'll have to move on because we're already an hour and 15 and we have a bunch of other stuff to cover as well.
Oh yeah, just for Junyang, I'll be releasing a version of Quant 7b v2 that runs on older iPhones. I was able to figure out the issues with the quantization. It was a newer Llama CVP change where when they change it to 16 to FP16, it just cuts off 3 of the bits. So you're supposed to change it to BF16 first and then leave the last weight at BF16, and then you got to do it in 2 steps. But anyway, I'll be releasing that because the 7B model for coding is pretty crazy to the point where I've started actually relying on it locally first. Like it's pretty nuts.
The 7B Quen 2 model that was released last week, you mean? Yes. Thanks, Nistan.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jing.
Yeah. Another line of comment, I don't know if Siri will integrate open source models, but I hope it will. I think open source models have their advantages in some specific points, like our models in coding. Yeah. I hope Siri will do these things like an open platform so we can integrate more open source models into it. Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that the 3-up intents or something that like the models that Siri will implement will not only be like big companies. I'm doubtful though. But I will say this one last thing that Swix, I think Robert Scoble mentioned this and he was absolutely right. Apple doesn't do ugly. And I think the outsourcing of the smart things, the out of their control things, the non-LoRa trained things, outsourcing them to another model will actually put Apple in an advantage of, hey, if somebody came up with if a screenshot of an iPhone with some, I don't know, racist stuff or some jailbroken stuff, if that comes, it may come from another model that's outside of the iPhone. Even though people will probably jailbreak Apple stuff as well. But yeah, we'll see. Folks, I think it's time for us to move on. It's been an hour and 15. If you're just stepped in here, you're on ThursdAI. We're here every Thursday for more than a year. Actually, this then turns into a newsletter and a podcast. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm with Weights and Biases, which is the best ML and AI tooling platform for observability. And yeah, this is we talk about everything AI related for every week. We focus on open source outside of weeks like this where Apple is announcing LLM and Gen AI into their platforms, which we will focus on. I'm also an Apple fanboy, so I will have to focus on. I think we're moving on to our next corner, next segment. It's called This Week's Buzz, where I talk about everything related to weights and biases. And in here, I actually will talk about some multiple stuff that's not necessarily weights and biases. I am going to have a talk in 2 weeks. And this talk is going to be in San Francisco live at the AI Engineer Conference, which the guy who runs this AI Engineer Conference is here with us on stage. So, Swix, what is this conference? Can you give us like a brief thing? Who's going to be there? Why should folks come? And I'll talk about my talk as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I should do the pew 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 like sound effect when you mentioned my stuff. Oh, God. Okay, you were here, long-time listeners of ThursdAI will remember that we did the first sort of in-person gathering last year, 6 months ago. Maybe months ago.
More, yeah.
More. Oh, man, time flies, man. Yeah. So we're back again for the AI Engineering World's Fair now. It is much, much bigger. It's like something like 4 times bigger than last year. And this time, last year, we got a little bit of support from OpenAI and Anthropic. This year, we have all the model labs, all the big clouds, and just every speaker that I want to hear from, basically just got them all in one room. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm excited about Alex's talk because as far as I know, Alex, you're the first one with a costume. Oh, wait, is this an alpha leak? Oh, shit.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm supposed to. Okay, I'm hyping up your talk, okay? This is the first one.
Listeners of ThursdAI, they should know a little bit more than the rest of the folks, yes.
Okay, yeah. So everyone go watch his talk. Don't watch Logan's talk. Yeah. Anyway, we got amazing folks. Scott Wu from Cognition is giving his first ever conference talk with us. So he's going to talk about Devin. We got people who like the GPU poor essay. We get Dylan Patel coming to speak about his updated views on GPU poor stuff.
Semi-analysis Dylan, right?
Yeah, semi-analysis Dylan. He's become a really good friend. I actually went to Taiwan on a random trip just because my friend is a Taiwan ambassador, and I ran into him in Taiwan just without planning. Just is that brown dude Dylan? And I saw him. We also have Chris Latner from Modular talking about Mojo. Justine Tunney, who's been leading the Llama File project. She's doing a super rare talk. She never does talks, and we had to talk her out into doing a talk with us.
That's amazing.
We're really happy. Yeah, we really tried. Like last year, our diversity was really poor, and this year we tried to really have a good showcasing of something like strong technical women, right? Not people who are not just there because they're women, but also like they're just doing good work that you have to like find them and just invite them, because usually you don't see these people at conferences like this. And then Thomas Donkey, the CEO of GitHub, also doing the sort of closing keynote with me. Just like a lot of really cool folks. I think I can say this because I'm not being specific. I think we have 3 model launches that will be happening at the conference. So that's exciting. And you can see the list of companies that we have to think about which companies are doing those launches, which will be fun.
So
yeah, I'll pause there.
How do people have to go to San Francisco? Can folks watch online? What's going on with this conference?
Yeah. Last year, the whole thing was live streamed. This year, we also have a live stream, but the challenge is that now we have 4 + 1 tracks, and we can only live stream one of them, right? So yes, if you're not in San Francisco, you can watch the live stream, but you'll miss out on 75% of the content. And yeah, that's just all we can manage AV-wise. And everything's recorded and we'll post it up. But I think that for me, the important thing is getting the community together in person and having them talk to each other, meet each other, discuss all that good stuff.
So I've been to the previous one, obviously. Huge shout out to you because you took a chance on me to do the media in the previous one, which like led me do ThursdAI more seriously, and then I joined Weights and Biases. And Weights and Biases is a proud sponsor of AI Engineer this year. I'm very happy to have facilitated this behind the scenes. I'm also giving a talk. Lucas Bewiled, the CEO, is also giving a talk on a separate track. We're going to have a booth there. Please, if you're in AI Engineer, you're coming. I know multiple ThursdAI listeners who come to AI Engineer. The cross there is like very high. So if you're there, please come listen to my talk instead of Logan's. Haha. Even though Logan is a great friend and he's been pushing me as well, come see me crash and burn if I won't be able to do the custom thing that Swix just announced the alpha. I think it's going to be incredible. If you are able to convince your boss and to pay you to fly there, please do. And if not, the things will be online on YouTube, and please share. With that, Swix, I'm hoping that you're able to actually make it back in time to the conference. Anything else you want to?
Yeah, that's the whole shebang, right? I don't know what to do there. Yeah, I was going to try to give a discount code for people, but my system is very laggy. Screw it. Okay, for anyone's listening here, if you're actually on the fence and you want a discount code, just go into the checkout thing and type in Feel the AGI, and you get a little bit cheaper tickets.
I think this deserves one air horn.
There's one air horn. That's the discount code I give to
discount code. Feel the AGI, folks. You heard it here first for ThursdAI.
ThursdAI people also get the AGI. Yeah. So look, like we're just trying to make this like a community event. This will be a fixture in the discourse. As far as I'm concerned, if you look at all the other conferences out there, they don't really have this curation because they don't put the effort that we put in getting people together. We have the Hamel Hussain, Eugene Yan, Jason Liu, and all the other folks, Shreya Shankar. We have all 6 authors of the LLMs and Urine LLMs in Production essay speaking as one of our closing keynotes. And I'm just like super excited that I can just get these like super OP folks all in one room and get you to meet them, and magic things will happen. That's the faith of community.
Yeah. And it's been great. I met a lot of amazing people last time, and I'm really hoping that the same will happen there as well this week, this time. And good luck organizing all of this week, and good luck getting there on time as well.
Man. Yeah.
And yeah, the thing that I wanted to end up on is that my talk is going to happen Thursday. And I currently have no plans about ThursdAI that Thursday, but something will happen, I'm sure. Swix promised me a room. We'll do some live streaming. I'm not sure if the ThursdAI that week will be in the regular scheduling. So I'm giving you a heads up right now. There's going to be some ThursdAI element to this. I'm not quite sure what, but we usually hang around. We usually figure this out. Maybe I'll do it and then hop on stage. We'll see. But yeah, ThursdAI is going to happen this week, and the model launches will cover in the ThursdAI episode probably later. Watch out. Last time, me and Swix, we did a live stream afterwards to decompress after the conference. Maybe we'll do that as well. And I think we gave enough air for this, and we'll move on to open source LLMs as well. And now we have a interview. And Gingy, hopefully you're still with us and you can unmute and present yourself. But before, I'll just do like a brief recap. As you guys know, first of all, we at Weights and Biases now build Weave, which is an evaluation framework and toolkit. But also, we at ThursdAI, we've been talking about human eval this and MMLU that, and human eval hard and MMLU pro. And we've talked about Scale releasing the SEAL leaderboard. We now have a new leaderboard from Abacus AI and Yan Lecun from NYU called LiveBench. It was released yesterday, and it's super cool. They claim it's impossible to game benchmark because they, behind the scenes, change a bunch of stuff. I will actually, I don't know if Nistan, if you can help me out to put this like LiveBench thing from Bindu ready on top of the space. I'll add this to the show notes. So basically another benchmark. So now we have quite a few places to look for that vibe feeling of which LLM is better than which. And so for now, by far, we know that the Qwen 2 open source LLM that was announced here on stage, of which Jun Yang here is one of the authors for, is by far like the best open source LLM. We now have another confirmation for this from this like LiveBench as well. And so LiveBench is one thing I wanted to cover. The purpose is like to better differentiate, and it's really hard to to fine-tune or memorize on this benchmark. It's impossible to do, and that's how they designed it together with Yan Lecun. And so if it's interesting to you, please read this. Livebench.ai is like where you will go to also measure. So now we have multiple places to go and like figure out like different LLMs. And another place, which is very interesting, dropped last week. We've talked about this. It's called MixEval. And MixEval is also a benchmark. And I think let's talk about MixEval a little bit. So we have the author and one of the folks from MixEval, Jinji Ni. Feel free to unmute yourself. This is your first time here. I'm very happy that you came because we talked about this last, and I wanted to just understand what you guys did there. Welcome to ThursdAI.
Thank you for inviting. I'm happy to introduce MixEvals to you guys. Yeah, I'm currently residing in Singapore, and I'm a LLM researcher. And we started the MixEvals project when we found that the open source evaluations are literally broken. Most of them are biased and very hard to use. Also, I saw some Twitter threads discussing evaluation, and I think some of the community may lack an appropriate understanding of what we are evaluating when we are developing the large language models and how we should do it. So in MixEvals, we started MixEvals to aim to delve deeply into the current benchmarks to find out what is their shortcomings and what we can do for them. Basically, we first did an in-depth analysis to show how biased and how inefficient of the current benchmarks. And then we propose a very elegant methodology to mix the current benchmarks. And we find they correlate quite closely with the Chatbot Arena, which is a current golden standard within the community, but with a 2,000 times faster speed and a 5,000 times cheaper cost than Chatbot Arena. I believe this benchmark is very useful for model developers to get a quick but precise result, and with a very low cost. And a very important thing I want to highlight is that MixEvals has a very stable and quick data updating pipeline. So which means it is not possible to hack, like you mentioned, the live bench. We did the same for MixEvals. We periodically update the data points. So it's not possible for the community or some LLM researchers. Maybe some evaluation data is mixed into their pre-training data in whatever ways, but by periodically updating the evaluation data points, we avoid that our evaluation data is contaminated. This is another very strong strength, and I want to highlight as a main feature of the MixEvals.
Yeah.
Alongside its high correlation with Chatbot Arena and its high speed and cheap cost.
So there's multiple things you mentioned. I want to take them one by one. Let's start with who's working on this, because I saw University of Singapore, and you also said, can other folks that worked with you come up? We only have. Could you at least mention them and shout them out and give them some credit? And then I saw also Carnegie Mellon and Allen Institute. Could you tell us who is behind this and give them a credit and shout out as well?
I think Xiang Yue is attending this session, right?
Yeah.
I think, maybe he hasn't turned on the speaker yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen the request from Xiang Yue. So we have Carnegie Mellon as well, and we have Allen Institute for AI, and you've collaborated with them. Is there any kind of compute provider there that you want to maybe mention as well? Oh, yeah, I see Xiang Yue as well. Okay, there he is. Okay, there. We'll add Xiang Yue as well. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is that you did a lot of research to understand the evals currently and how they're not great. Could you give me one example, maybe you or Xiang Yue, one example in which the current evals are broken specifically? Maybe not the arena, maybe the standard evals. Maybe also how arena is broken, if you want to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not attacking any specific.
No, without attack, just a very clear.
Yeah, their work is great, but we are we're delving into a right direction to analysis. I think in our analysis, I find that some benchmarks, some general domain benchmarks, they are actually quite restricted in their topic coverage. We visualize the topics into a 2D map and find that these benchmarks only focus on the very small specific topics. This is not a bad thing for some specific users, but if you want to do a more general purpose evaluation, I think you have to have a more comprehensive query. And yeah, I think Winograd has a very small region of topics, but it is known as a general purpose benchmark. So besides that, I think, yeah, Chatbot Arena, we also visualize their query representations, and we found that they are slightly biased towards the technical users, which means there are more technical users than like other platform like ChatGPT. So this kind of query bias may also impact the evaluation result, the model rankings. It's great, but it's not perfect to use it to evaluate the daily used LLMs, which is designed for the common purpose usage in the real world. The user is not only technical users.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about cost. How are you calculating how much it costs the arena to actually come up with these benchmarks? Because I'm assuming behind the scenes, the compute costs are provided by the labs, right? So OpenAI provides compute to Arena. They want their Jungyang. Maybe you can talk about this, but you guys probably provide API to Arena as well to evaluate Quen, correct? Am I understanding this correctly? If that's like fine to say?
Yeah, we previously, Together AI, provided the API to Chatbot Arena, and then our Alibaba Cloud API provided the API to Chatbot Arena. How we did this, yeah. I think Chatbot Arena has some bias. As Ginger said, we have some biases in some specific users are actually using Chatbot Arena, but there are a lot of users that are not using Chatbot Arena, so you may not. So the results are biases to the specific users. That might be the problems. And we may find that there are some style biases in the Chatbot Arena. For example, the Llama 3 style. I think Llama 3 is a very good model, but the style biases, as Chatbot Arena official blog just said, yeah, it's just encouraging the users to give high credits to such answers. Yeah. So that might be some problems. So that's why MixEvals is so important. I think MixEvals is so good.
Yeah. So let's talk about.
That's true.
Yeah, Ginger. Let's talk about like how are you getting to correlation this high, like 96% correlation, I think, on hard and 93% correlation. What are you correlating to? You're correlating to just like the votes on the Elons Arena. Like the Elons.
Yeah. Both the overall version and the English version, they achieve a high correlation. I think the high correlation comes from a very similar user queries between MixEvals and the Chatbot Arena. Like we both use the real-world user distribution. So both of the queries are grounded in real-world user distribution. So the query from the query side, it's not biased. So another bias comes from the grading side. So when you grade the model's responses, if you use LLMs to grade, there may be some preference biases. But MixEvals use ground truth-based benchmarks. So actually, it's annotated by humans. So it's the same as Chatbot Arena. Chatbot Arena is also judged by humans for pairwise comparison. Mm-hmm. So basically ground truth-based benchmarks is not that biased for the grading process. And the Chatbot Arena removes such subjective bias by collecting a large amount of human preferences for us, response. Not a single response, like for a very many queries and using many queries and using many human preferences. And we call this the wisdom of the crowd. Like it will be more stable. So it's also less biased. When we achieve the same biasness on the query side and the grading side, we will get a very high correlation with the Chatbot Arena.
That's awesome. Let's talk about some of the differences between kind of the top models, right? Because we saw, I don't know if you take a look at the Seal from Scale, and then we have LiveBench now. There's quite a few differences with Gemini specifically. And I wanted to talk about this one. Do you do any coding evaluation, or are you specifically about like language and English and overall? Are you doing any coding?
Yeah. No, there's no specific coding subset in MixEval. It's a general purpose query set.
Yeah, I see. So it looks like Gemini is quite high in most benchmarks besides LiveBench. I'm wondering what could be like the difference in there, because on MMLU obviously those models score very high, but I don't know if I have a properly formatted question here, so I guess I'll move on. Let's talk about the speed of this. If I'm developing fine-tune, we have a bunch of folks who are fine-tuning models. Is MixEval hard now, fairly quick for me to run on my own models, or is it something that only you guys can run so that the questions actually don't leak into the datasets?
Yeah, the data updating pipeline is actually very fast. It can be updated within 1 minute. So this is why we can easily update the data points. So when we update data points, the data points literally, strictly, you cannot ensure that they are not leaked into the pre-training data sets. But we also incorporate new benchmarks periodically. Using this, we can, to the largest extent, we can ensure that they will not be contaminated.
I see. But the data set and the evals is on Hugging Face as well, right? So I, like, as somebody who fine-tunes or something, I be able to run this on my own outputs, or like on my own LLM or fine-tunes, etc.?
Yeah. It hasn't been deployed on the automatic open LLM benchmark, but it is actually very easy to register, to use our click and go evaluation suite. Basically, you only need to do a few setup steps, and then that's all. You can just register a model with a few steps and set up and evaluate and get a result. You don't have to do any more setup. I think it's quite robust, and I think users may have a try for our official evaluation suite. Besides that, I think users can also implement their own evaluation suites by following our suggested protocols, which is also specified in the GitHub repo.
I see. All right. So I just wanted to say that, like, we've talked about evaluations multiple times here on ThursdAI. We know that they're problematic. There's like problems with understanding like human eval. We know that the contamination happens, and sometimes the conversation about contamination happens. And so we appreciate the release. I really wanted to highlight your work and to tell people that there's additional ways to evals, and especially the higher pipeline, and the reduced cost is very important as well. So I wanted to highlight your work. Wolfram, specifically somebody who runs benchmarks of his own, I wanted to see if you have any like questions for the team, or maybe some comments as well about this MixEval effort.
Yeah, I think it's a great effort, because the up-to-date information, so they can't be trained on it because you just release a new version which is better or newer. That is a very good approach. I just can't scale with that, of course, because I was doing it all by myself. Yeah, it's great that there are more benchmarks. I always say we can't have enough, because every benchmark is a data point, and where they converge, we get really good information which models are the best. Yeah, I don't see it as a competition with others who are doing benchmarks, but more a collaboration.
Absolutely.
So good job.
So keep collaboration, going. Absolutely. And thank you guys for releasing this. Wolfram, thank you also for your work, obviously. For folks who are listening, now there's multiple places to try and understand. So previously, we told you, hey, listen to us, but also go to Reddit, local Llama subreddit, where Wolfram often posts his deep dives. Go to the chatbot arena for LMSys, and then go to the OpenLLM benchmark on Hugging Face. Now we have the MixEval, which is also, you guys have a leaderboard on the website as well, the updates. We now have the LiveBench thing that was released yesterday, and the Scale release Seal as well. So we now have multiple sources from which we can get an understanding of like newer models. Gingy, maybe one last thing for you before we're going to let you tell people where they can find and maybe do contributions. So if a new model releases or a new fine tune, how quickly will it like show up? Are you guys committed to keep this up to date, or is this like a research and then somebody else should build like a live leaderboard? Are you committed to keeping this leaderboard like live?
We will try to get the leaderboard up to date. We will update the results ourselves. Maybe if the authors of these models, they don't test on MixEvals themselves, maybe we will test for them if they provide API, like something like that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so awesome for you to release this. I was very happy to for this effort as well, and to let people know that there's an additional place, and also with Jun Yang's signature of trust as well. It's great that you guys already released Qwen 2 with the MixEvals report in there as well. Jinji, anything else that you wanted to tell folks that I've missed, or how they can get involved, or where should they see this, folks who are listening to this?
I think you have covered quite comprehensive information about MixEvals. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Jinji. Thank you, Xiang Yi, for MixEvals effort. And I think we have to move on because we're almost at time. We have a bunch of stuff that we haven't covered yet. One last thing that I wanted to cover in the area of open source. Two things, but very superficially and super quick. Nisten, did you see the Samba thing? I wish we had LDJ as well, but Nisten, did you have a chance to see the Samba thing from Microsoft?
No, I did not.
All right. It's very fun for me when, even for co-hosts of ThursdAI, I'm telling breaking news as well. Microsoft just announced, they didn't release anything, but they announced a paper called Samba, which is a 3.8 billion parameter Mamba architecture. Jinji, let me put you on mute, brother. Mamba architecture plus sliding window attention model that's beating Phi 3 on multiple benchmarks. And we talked about Phi 3 being like a 3.8, I think, around that area, at least the small version. This one is a Mamba architecture one. So we've talked about state space models before. We talked about with Jamba from the AI21 team. We've talked with the Cartesia folks that this architecture is better suited for like longer context. And we also mentioned, I'm just like giving you guys a recap for those who are listening for the first time maybe. We've mentioned the quadratic attention of transformer architectures, where with longer context, transformers require more and more compute. And Mamba and like state space models or state space models, they are actually better for like a longer context. Microsoft planned Samba that outperforms Phi Mini on major benchmarks like MMLU and GSM 8K by a large margin, which is incredible because like it's the same size model with a different architecture, it's not transformers, and beating MMLU and GSM 8K. And when they say something like, when we trained on the 4K sequence length, Samba shows improved perplexity up to 1 million context length on proof pile, while still keeping its linear decoding complexity. So linear decoding complexity is obviously like significantly better than whatever quadratic attention problem we have. Oh, I see Pico Creator wants to chime in on this super quick. And while Pico Creator comes up, I will just mention that he is the maintainer for RWKV, correct, Eugene?
Yep.
Yeah, welcome. Did you see the Samba stuff? Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I was actually talking to Six about it when he mentioned it. The funny thing is, we are really hyped up about hybrids. So what's happening behind the scenes? So this is from the Cartesia/WWDC group. Then there's actually 3 groups right now. So there's also Black Mamba.
Usually, I would just say, please be brief. I really appreciate the input always, but I know we can go like super deep, and I have a bunch of other stuff to cover. So please give us like a over the top summary and not like a super in depth summary. We'll have to find time like next time for the super in depth one.
The most exciting thing about this is we have multiple groups saying that a hybrid subquad plus transformer model performs better than either architecture, and we do not know why. And that's crazy.
Yep. And so another thing that I think is hybrid, you mean the sliding window attention is the hybrid part, or just like transformer plus Mamba stuff?
Transformers plus Mamba.
Yeah, so Jamba was also hybrid, right? Like from AI21, I think they talked about like the benefit of both worlds as well. And then the Microsoft Samba thing, again, they didn't release the model, so it remains to be seen how well this works. They say they have a perfect memory recall up to 256K context length, while Mistral struggles within the 4K length. So they did like something additional to a needle in a haystack. So we are going to keep you up to date on where this model drops and whether or not its performance is actually better than Phi. I will say that Microsoft is using Phi now in every on-device, many of the stuff on device. So seeing like smaller models significantly beating Phi 3. By the way, we just mentioned that the Apple device is like also 3.8 billion parameters. So that seems to be like the sweet spot for on-device models. If we're getting a model that significantly beats those, that's like the Mamba architecture, I think that's a huge win for this architecture. Eugene, go ahead and then we'll move on to Sakana stuff.
It might be still a little bit early because we haven't fully scaled these things yet, but the important thing is it outperforms when you control for training data and size.
Sorry, you dropped for a second. Could you repeat the most important thing is?
These papers are covering that a hybrid, when optimized, outperforms either architecture when controlled for data set and size. We will need to actually see a larger trained model before we can compare with, let's say, Pi or Llama 3, etc.
Oh, I see. So we're still waiting for them to actually come through with the excitement for this. All right. Yeah, that's fair. They released the code for training the smaller models as well. Folks want to use their code and play around with this. The code is released, and then we're waiting for them to maybe potentially open source the models as well. The next thing that I want to cover is from Sakana AI, which released LLM Squared, and they did drop the weights. Sakana AI is co-founded by Leon James, who's one of the Transformer original authors, the Transformers paper, and also David Ha previously from DeepMind. We've talked about Sakana's evolutionary merging algorithms before on ThursdAI. They released a bunch of models that they merged with evolutionary algorithms, and now they released a new paper and a model that they use LLMs to come up with new preference algorithms to train better LLMs. So they use LLMs to write code and actually come up with new algorithms they call something discovery policy optimization. So we talked multiple times about DPO, direct preference optimization, and PPO. We talked about all these methods of preparing data sets and training in order to like make models and fine tunes better. And now Sakana, and so all of these models, or at least so far as far as seen, all of these preference algorithms were human-based. And now Sakana says that, hey, we can use LLMs to actually come up with these algorithms. And they came up with what they claim a state-of-the-art preference algorithm that the LLM came up with that they then reviewed as humans and said, oh, this is actually better. And what they came up with is called Discovered Policy Optimization, DiscoPop, and it beats DPO on the Alpaca eval performance, on held out Alpaca eval performance. They call this LLM Squared because LLM is using LLM to beat another LLM, and I think that's like super cool. So shout out to Sakana AI. They released the model, and I haven't seen, it just released yesterday or today, so we haven't seen yet models that are trained or fine-tuned with this DiscoPop thing. But Junyang, I wanted to hear from you because I know that Qwen2, you guys used different preference optimization algorithms. What's your take on this? What's possible here, and does this sound good to you?
Yeah, I don't know DiscoPop for details, but we have discovered a lot of IOHF methods, including DPO and PPO. They actually achieve very similar effects. What really matters is really the data. For example, if we do not have good data and you use PPO and DPO and they do not differ very differently. But actually, if you have good data for DPO, if you only use offline DPO, you can achieve very good effects. Although we know that if you use online IOHF methods, you use a reward model, but you can achieve a good method, but you achieve a good effect. But actually, you really need good data into it. So I don't really care about the new method. Actually, I really care about is it capable of leveraging the good data? Yeah, that's what I care about.
Interesting. Okay. So the thing that I care about is that some of the automation of the process of creating LLMs is now like handed off to LLMs, and now LLMs are improving at least part of this, because there's this whole like conversation with Leopold Eschen something, I forgot his name, and he talks about what's coming next, and they all talk about when AGI replaces the AI researchers, then like the actual FOOM starts and like actual like speed up in the capabilities starts when that's getting replaced replaced. And this feels to me like at least start of this, where LLMs are now able to come up with algorithms that improve LLMs like almost, and then humans review them. So that's from ThursdAI, and like very crack team as well. So like we trust them, and shout out to ThursdAI for this. Anything else that I wanted to cover in open source AI? I think that's pretty much it. Nista, anything else in open source AI that I missed that's very important? Nista or Wolfram, anything else I missed here?
There was another paper which claimed they were doing 80 tokens per second on a 7B model on mobile, but we haven't really been able to reproduce it, and we're going to do a reading on that. So that might be, we need to verify that, because it was some pretty cool stuff. Like they were using sparse decoding on the feed-forward layers, and they were getting like 80 tokens per second. And they were even able to run like the Mixtral 4x7B on an iPhone, it was claimed. But until these are reproduced, I think we should leave it for next week.
All right.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff there.
We'll take a look next week. All right, let's move on to the big companies, LLM, super quick, and then we'll move forward. Actually, no, we covered OpenAI doubled their revenue in the past 6 months. Mistral announced a 600 million Series B round, which is great for them. Shout out to Mistral. They're doing amazing things. Hopefully this means more open source from Mistral. This is a very tiny thing, but a very fun thing. Google released something called GenType, where you can generate a whole alphabet with generative AI models, and that's just like super fun to play with. So when you sign up to the newsletter for ThursdAI, the opener will be a alphabet that I generated with GenType thing. But besides this, we talked about Apple. In the vision and video category this week, wait, do I have a thing for this? I think I have a thing for this that I haven't used in a while. Let's do it. Where is it? AI art, diffusion models, text to video and images, and everything in between. Only on ThursdAI. See, the real reason I'm using these music like transitions is for me to breathe and drink a little bit of water. That's the secret behind this, but it's also fun. On the diffusion and AI stuff, we have Stable Diffusion finally, Stability AI finally giving us Stable Diffusion 3 weights, and you can go and download them. They're non-commercial, so you cannot use them for commercial purposes, but they're here. So basically you can generate stuff with Stable Diffusion 3. It's really fun, even though if you're using Midjourney or DALL-E 3, I think Stable Diffusion is very close, but still stylistically Midjourney, I feel like bids this. But the benefits of Stable Diffusion 3 is improved photorealism, prompt adherence is significantly better, so you can do something like a photo of 3 antique dragon glass magic potions in an old abandoned apothecary shop. The first one is blue with the label 1.5, second one is red with the label SDXL, the third one is green with the label SD3. So it generates the text properly, and it knows what the first one is, the second one is, and it generates the colors as well. So prompt adherence is very good. So you can do like very long prompts and they will be great. And also the text is great. So like for memes and everything, Stable Diffusion 3 is really good. And also we already seen fine tunes starting to pour in, and we all know that the community will provide with the fine tunes. We had some folks from Replicate here before who do some of the stuff. I think they dropped, but our friends at FAL and our friends at Replicate, all of these folks are already starting to host Stable Diffusion 3 for you to play around with this. And it's also available via the Stability API and the Stable Assistant, etc. And we're really hoping that this is not the last release from Stability AI. We really hope that they will give us more stuff in the open source. Stability AI also trained bigger versions of this. So this is I want to say a 2 billion parameter model. Maybe I'm mistaken in my summary, but this is like the smaller model. They call it Stable Diffusion 3 Medium. They definitely have a large and an extra large that they haven't open sourced, open weighted, which is a shame. But I, as somebody who started my whole AI career with Stable Diffusion 1.4 open weights release, I am very thankful and very happy that this finally happened. And shout out to everybody who worked on this. And I'm very excited to see the fine tunes, the distillation methods, all of the excitement that we are used to when something like this drops. So just like a lot of excitement there. So go play with this on FAL, go play with this on Replicate. Like many people host this for free. FAL specifically, their friends, they've been on ThursdAI last time. Their generation is like super, super fast. Within like seconds, you get this, which is super cool. And then the additional thing and the last thing that we'll cover here is that Luma AI, which we also have a friend in Luma, Arthur, who started out in WebGPU. Nistan, you remember Arthur Islamov, a friend of the pod who used to come up and talk about WebGPU, then went to work for Luma. He then dropped in our group chat that like Luma just released something called Dream Machine. And if you guys remember last week, we talked about Kling from a Chinese company that started giving access to a video model generating Sora-like quality video, but it required a Chinese phone number to even register, but it was an open access compared to Sora. Last week we covered this. Luma dropped a Dream Machine this week in full open access, although the queue there is insane. Like it's really hard to now generate anything, but it's free and the queue is, you can just like queue up. It's given us not quite Sora, but very close. So like very far away from the Stable Visual Diffusion or Runway or Pika Labs or whatever we had in the, let's call them the previous wave of video generators. Short video generation in free access, and they look very cool. They have image to video also, so not only text to video. If you see many memes, they're getting animated with these tools. You probably seen it already. And if not, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'll share some with the newsletter as well. They have camera work, so you can specify where the camera moves. For example, cinematic motion. It's been trained on a bunch of stuff. As I'm talking about this, there's a tweet from Andrei Karpathy just literally right now. So let me just pin this because he's very happy about this as well. So he's probably going to make it even more impossible to use this now because Karpathy comes with a lot of people watching him. But Luma, a shout out to Luma for the Dream Machine release and in open access as well. I'm really hoping that this puts pressure on OpenAI to finally give us Sora because nothing that happens, and that's fine. I have on my timeline a comparison between some Sora stuff that's cherry-picked and some Luma Dream Machine stuff as well. So if you want to check this out, I'll add this to the show notes, although they were cherry-picked from Sora and the Luma stuff is just like somebody who got access. However, as I've been saying, if you tell me a year ago that this is now possible, a year from now, I would not have believed you. So it's quite incredible to see how fast we're going towards something like this. And yeah, I think it's open access. Anybody else wanted to tell me about Dream Machine? Have you played with this? Do you have any cool generations that you did? I saw a strawberry elephant one, and I really loved that because like kind of the crossovers are really amazing. So I saw like an elephant is made out of strawberry and walking around, and that was like super cool. Anyone tried Luma Dream Machine? No? All right. So I think we'll end on this. With this, I think this is everything that we've covered on ThursdAI. We're really geeked out on the Apple stuff. I really appreciate everybody who joined ThursdAI for this week, everybody who contributed in the chats, and everybody who keeps coming from week to week to listen to the show. I really appreciate all of you guys. I hope that you've learned anything. If you haven't been able to follow any of the stuff, ThursdAI is here for you. Our motto is we stay up to date so you don't have to, and we even stayed up to date so some of the co-hosts didn't know of the stuff that we've updated. So that's great, and I really wish you, all of you, a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week. The next week after that, I'm going to be in San Francisco for the AI Engineer Conference, so I don't have plans about ThursdAI yet, but we'll make do. We'll do something. It's going to be a live show of some sort. With that, thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend, and have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye-bye, everyone.